I feel like we've made it to that point of the year where Goodreads is taunting you if you have not kept up with reading 400 books a month. So I want to help you out. Hi, my name is Paige. Welcome to my channel. We are well over halfway through the year, and I know that Goodreads is a little bit rude sometimes towards this part of the year, and it's telling you that you have not read anything at all. So I decided to throw together a few of my books that I feel like are very quick reads. So if you want to reach your Goodreads goal, here are some books that can help you. But I do want to say that Goodreads goals really don't matter. If you are enjoying the books that you are reading, that is good enough. I don't think anybody should be striving for a number to read by the end of every single year. It is fun. It's fun to see what people read, and I enjoy trying to challenge myself, but I think that setting a Goodreads goal of one book for the entire year is good too. There are so many books to read, and as long as we are just reading and enjoying what we're reading, then who cares how many books we're reading in a month. But for this video, I have about 20 or so books that are around 350 pages that I feel like you could read really quickly. I read all of these within one day. Some of them I did listen to the audiobook for, so I will let you know if I did use the audiobook to help me read them a little bit faster, because that is something that I do. But I will just start telling you what books I would recommend. I hope this video is helpful and that some of these books are able to help you reach your goals. We're just gonna start off right on the top. So I just recently read All Quiet on the Western Front by Eric Maria Remarque, and I thought this was really good. It's called the greatest war novel of all time, and I might agree with that. It's very dark and sad, and there's not a lot of hope in this one, but it's just very atmospheric, and it kept my attention the entire time. The audiobook for this is about 7 hours long, and I read on about 2 times speed, so it took me maybe 3-4 hours to read this book, but it was very good. I just felt entranced by it the entire time. The writing is beautiful, so this is one that I would recommend. It's not lighthearted, but it is quick. Then we have Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Tachikazu Kawaguchi, and this is a time-traveling coffee shop book. It is very short. I would say that half the people who read it love it, half the people who read it like it, and there's not much in between. I don't think I've heard anybody hate this book, but it is very repetitive, I will say that. So this is basically about a coffee shop where if you sit in a very specific seat, you can go back in time in this coffee shop. And so there are a lot of rules to how the time traveling works in it, but the further you get on into the story, I feel like the more emotional it gets, because even though you're kind of hearing the same rules over and over again, the storylines that you follow, you start to get more connected to some of the characters that are in this coffee house. So I really enjoyed it. I felt like the writing was clunky at times, and I think that might be due to the translation of it, but it is a really short, easy read, and I would recommend it. Next up, we have Gallant by V.E. Schwab. I did listen to the audiobook for this one, and I had a really fun time. This is a young adult story, and it's really fast-paced. It's about a orphan who is living in an orphanage, and she one day gets a letter from somebody in her family, and they invite her back to the manor that they live in. And she goes there, and the family don't seem quite so welcoming, but they do let her stay there, and she starts to notice that there's ghosts and it's spooky and weird things are going on in this house. So I had a really fun time. We read it as part of my book club, and everyone really enjoyed it. So yeah, it's just really easy to read. I would recommend the audiobook if you like audiobooks, but it's a quick one. YA spooky vibes. The next 4 books are written in prose, so they're very quick to get through, and I did listen to the audiobook for all of them, and I think the authors for each of these books all narrated them, except for maybe one of them. But I highly recommend listening to audiobooks for books that are written in prose, because hearing how it's meant to be read, I don't know, it adds another level to these books. But first up, we have Long Way Down by Jason Reynolds, and this is about a boy named Will whose older brother is shot, and where he lives, it's really more like an eye for an eye. So he is on a mission to go and kill the man who killed his brother, and he's traveling down the elevator, and as he's going down, he's meeting different people, and I don't know how else to explain it, but it's like kind of his mental thoughts of while he's going down this elevator to get revenge for his brother's death. And it's moving, it's heartbreaking. I really enjoyed listening to this one. Next up, we have Other Words for Home by Jasmine Warga, and this is about a young girl who moves from Syria to, I want to say like Ohio, but somewhere in the States, and it's just like her journey of being young and in middle school and not knowing the language of the country that she's living in now and feeling a little bit like an outsider. And I really enjoyed it. It was so sweet, and I used to be a teacher, and there's like a teacher in this that I feel like is really helpful to her journey, and I just had a good time reading this one. This one is just so precious to me. Then we have Black Flamingo by Dean Atta, and this is about a man's journey into becoming a drag queen and how drag kind of helped him feel like the type of person that he wanted to be. And I did listen to the audiobook for this one. I think it was narrated by Dean Atta, and it was also, again, a very quick read. And last up, for books written in prose, we have Clap on You Lynn by Elizabeth Acevedo, and this is about two girls who don't know that the other exists and they are sisters, but when their father dies, they find out about each other, and one of them decides to travel to where the other sister is living, and they get to know each other. And it's really heartbreaking. It's about grief and it's about sisterhood, and I really enjoyed this one, and Elizabeth Acevedo did narrate this one. So again, it just added another element to it. Should probably not have put the smallest book on the bottom, but we're gonna see how that goes. Then I have two middle grades for you, and I feel like middle grades in general are just really quick, easy reads. They're not very dense, so any middle grade would be a recommendation. But two that I have are Ivy, Aberdeens Letter to the World by Ashley Herring Blake. I don't know if I've read a book that I didn't love by Ashley Herring Blake. They are just so good. But this is about Ivy, and she is the middle child of her family. She feels a little bit overlooked, and one day her house gets demolished by a tornado, and she just continues to feel like her family is overlooking her, and it's heartbreaking and it's so sweet, and I love Ivy so much. I want to give her the biggest hug. So I definitely recommend this to literally everybody to read. If it has not already made it on your TBR, it needs to immediately. And I can say the exact same thing for this book, King and the Dragonflies by Case and Callender. This is about a young boy named King, and his brother has just recently died, and he is grieving really hard, but he also believes that his brother was reincarnated as a dragonfly. And before his brother died, King also had a friend, and King's older brother kind of told him that, oh, you shouldn't be friends with that boy anymore because people might think that you're gay. And so that caused a rift between King and his friend, and now that King is grieving, he's also trying to get that friendship back because he really misses his friend. And so it's about grief and it's about friendship, and it's heartbreaking and beautiful, and I absolutely love this book. So if I have not already sold this book to you, please add this to your TBR because it is such a great book. This one and Ivy Aberdeen I feel like are just must reads. Next up, we have Yesterday is History by Kosoko Jackson, and this is basically about a time traveling liver. So we have Andre, and he gets a liver transplant, and then he discovers that he can time travel, and he goes back in time and ends up at his house in, I want to say, the 60s or 70s, and he meets a man or a boy named Michael, and so they become friends. But then Andre kind of time travels back and meets the brother of his liver donor. So he meets Blake, and Blake's family is kind of like, hey, we're all time travelers, you can time travel now, we kind of need to help you out here. So it's about Andre kind of traveling back in time and talking to Michael, Andre also trying to get to know Blake and this family who has weird time traveling abilities, and it's interesting. It's a fun time. I don't think I loved this book, but it was good. It kind of felt a little bit like One Last Stop, but I do prefer One Last Stop. That one is just not quite a quick read though, so that's why that one didn't make it into this video, and this one did. But it is fun, it's quick, it's easy to read, and like a time traveling liver, that's interesting, right? I love this book so much. This is Darius the Great is Not Okay by Adib Khorram, and this is about, I don't know how to explain it. This is about Darius, and he has depression, and he is just not really doing great. His school life isn't great. He doesn't really have a lot of friends. The people there kind of bully him, and every time he tries to talk about this to his dad's kind of like, well, you just need to try harder, you just need to kind of put yourself out there a little bit more. So Darius just feels like he doesn't have a solid relationship with his family, but he has a sick grandfather in Iran, so the family needs to go and kind of say their final goodbyes to his grandfather. And while Darius is there, he kind of meets his first real friend, and it's about family and friendship and mental health, and I really enjoyed this one. This one was sold to me as more of a romance, but I would not look for a romance if you are looking for this book. This one is definitely more about mental health and accepting who you are and learning how to be friends with people. I don't know, it was just really, really heartbreaking. I cried the entire way through, but not because I was sad, but because I just felt for Darius. I felt his heartbreak, but I also felt for his dad, and I really loved these characters. I felt like there was a lot that I learned while reading this book. So I highly recommend this one too. I love this book so much. And can you make a quick reads recommendation without recommending Daisy Jones and the Six? I don't think so. So this is by Taylor Jenkins Reid if you have not heard about this book, but this one is the audiobook to recommend. This is a full cast of characters, and it's an interview format where we are learning why a band from the 70s broke up. So Daisy Jones is kind of our main character, but she was the it girl, and she then was pulled into this band called the Six, and they wrote this like all-time best-selling album and had a few great shows, but then the band broke up, and this interview, we're basically just trying to figure out what happened with them. And the characters are so flawed, and you can't really root for anybody, but you feel for everybody. And it's just, I don't know, it's about like heartbreak and real life and the choices that everybody makes and how that gets them where they are. It's just a really beautiful story. It's a really fun one to listen to, and it's maybe 6 or 7 hours long, so I highly recommend listening to this audiobook if you want to get some books out of the way. But I'm sure you've already read this. Who hasn't read Daisy Jones? Then we have Frederick Bachman's Anxious People. I read this one at work in a day. It was a really good time, but I also was fighting off tears while I was reading it. So this one is basically about a bank robbery gone wrong, and we're then following all of the characters who were held hostage after this bank robbery and trying to figure out what happened during it. And it sounds like it should be like a suspenseful book, but it's not. It is just like about life and adulthood and how much it freaking sucks to be a grown-up. And like I said, I was fighting back tears while at work while I was listening to this one, but it's a good one. I like this significantly more than I liked Beartown, so I highly recommend it. It's funny, it's heartbreaking, it's moving, it's hopeful. It's a good one. And then we have romance, because most romances are all pretty quick reads. So I have a little stack over here that I'll tell you about, but we're going to start off with Tessa Dare's Girl Meets Duke series that starts with The Duchess Deal, then we have The Governess Game, and The Wallflower Wager. And these are all historical romances basically about a girl meeting a duke and falling in love. This is kind of a marriage of convenience sort of deal. This one was more my favorite of the series. I don't know if it's like enemies to lovers, more just like strangers to lovers, where there's a governess who comes in and helps raise some kids, and it's cute. But I think this one was more enemies to lovers, and there's a lot of cute pets in this one. So they're all just really silly and cute and fun. I really enjoyed all of these, and I cannot wait for the 4th one in this series to come out. I want to read it immediately. Then we have Roommate by Serena Bowen, and this is kind of like a one-sided enemies to lovers where one of them thinks that the person hates them. So this is about Roderick and Kieran, and I believe it's Roderick who had moved away and things did not work out where he was living, so he moves back home, but his parents will not let him live there. So he's kind of living out of his car for a little bit, and then Kieran lets him move into his house, even though Kieran thinks that Roderick does not like him very much. And it's them becoming roommates and realizing that maybe they have more in common than they think. So I enjoyed this one. I read it really quick. I enjoy Serena Bowen's writing. It's just so easy to fly through, and yeah, I recommend this one. It's cute. Next up is Conventionally Yours by Annabeth Albert. This is about 2 boys who are really big into a card game that I feel is very similar to Magic, and they have a convention that they want to go to so that they can win like a scholarship or a really big amount of money, each for different reasons why they want to win. And their group of people who were going to go to this convention all one by one kind of fall out of it. So it's these 2 boys who are going on a cross-country trip, and they don't get along. They do not like each other, but as they are going onto this trip, they kind of realize that maybe they get along a little bit better than they thought they did, and it's so cute. They are so cute together. So yeah, read this one. I flew through it. It's so easy to read. I did read the audiobook with this one and I didn't love it, but it was okay. It was still good. I still really enjoyed my reading experience. Then we have Things You Save in a Fire by Catherine Center. I'm going to go all out and say this is not a great book, but it is a very quick read. You can read this so fast. Basically, this is about a woman who is a firefighter, and one day she kind of publicly embarrasses herself because she yells at another really important firefighter figure. And so she gets relocated to where her parents are living, and she's in this firehouse that doesn't really want a girl firefighter there, and she meets a rookie firefighter who she does end up getting along with. And I don't remember much else other than it was very fast paced. The romance happens so quickly, but it was a really easy read. So that's why I made it in this video. So if you want like a cute, quick firefighter romance, this is your one. And last up we have Book Lovers by Emily Henry. I read this the other day and I am now obsessed. I think this might be my favorite romance of all time because it was so good. So in this we have Nora, who is a literary agent and she's really good at her job. And at the beginning she is in a meeting with an editor and trying to really sell this book that she is the agent for. And our editor, Charlie, turns it down. He's like, I don't like the setting of this book. I don't want to do it. So they kind of get off on the wrong foot. And then we're jumping a few years into the future and Nora's sister Libby is pregnant with her third child. She seems really overwhelmed and asks Nora to go on a little vacation with her. And so Nora does, and Charlie ends up being there. And it's not really enemies to lovers, I would not say. It's more bad first impressions to lovers, and I adored this so much. I adored Nora and Libby's relationship. I adored Charlie to the point that I was crying so much because I loved him so much. So this is such a good book. It is like Emily Henry's other books where there's more of like a heartbreaking, sad undertone in some parts of it. There is a parent who is deceased in this book and it's very sad. So it's not just all lighthearted romance, but it's beautiful. I love it so much. I highly recommend, if you have not gotten your hands on this one, to definitely read this book. So those are my 20 books that are quick reads, and I hope that one of them helps you get your Goodreads goal. But if you have made it this far in the video, leave me any pink emoji and I will see you in my next video. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.